area. Okay, I'm more or less ready, and I'm sure you are. So let's go for it. Kera, Badras?
Yeah. Yes, let's do this. Yeah.
Okay. It's recorded. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Welcome to Prof TV. Joining us from Armenia is Professor Vahram der Matevosyan. He is the chairman of the Political Science and International Affairs Department at the American University of Armenia, the AUA. Professor Vahram der Matevosyan, let me first congratulate you upon your recent publication, which appeared in the prestigious Digest of Middle Eastern Studies. It is entitled Deadlocked in History and Geopolitics, Revisiting Armenia-Turkey Relationships. It's a very, very long article you have written, publication, very, very interesting. I don't know how much of what you have written we'll be able to discuss, but I would really like our listeners, viewers, to maybe find that article and read it at length. Let me start, and it's very difficult for me to start. I don't know where to start. There are two words that keep coming up in this publication, and that is reconciliation and normalization. And you say reconciliation takes place between nations, normalization takes place between states. Now, which comes first? Reconciliation, normalization? And how do we move about these two ideas?
Once again, thank you very much, Vahram, for this opportunity. Last time we talked, it was in January when there was too much uncertainty. Without a question during this period, we have no less uncertainty that it was time in January. But I guess now, as we have more and more emerging questions, we have to be open and discuss questions that under different circumstances we wouldn't like to discuss. But given the sensitivity of the question and given the pace of the developments of the recent months, I guess there are certain questions that we have to address. You're right, the article that was published and I gladly shared with you was submitted long before the Azerbaijani aggression against Artsakh, Armenia last year. And I knew that for any peer-reviewed articles to be published, it will take months. This was no exception. And when I received the first feedback from the reviewers, I understood that this comes in a very interesting and challenging time for Armenia, as there were first statements coming from Azerbaijan and Turkey that basically Azerbaijan has nothing against, that Azerbaijan doesn't object establishing Armenian-Turkish relations. So it was a very interesting period, and I saw that this article is quite timely. What happened for the last 2 or 3 weeks in Armenia and between the exchange of statements between Ankara and Yerevan once again confirms my main argument in this article, which is the importance of disentangling the reconciliation from the normalization processes. So I believe back in 2008 and 2009, the Armenian government was not able to disentangle these two important concepts. As a result of these two complex problems were brought together with the hope that the rapprochement between Turkey and Armenia is irreversible, and we can go through this process. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, or fortunately, the future will tell us. But in 2009, it became obvious that these protocols were dead. But I mean, from political perspective, they were dead. But from conceptual, historical, psychological, and diplomatic perspectives, they were alive and kicking for the last 10 years. And one of the major shortcomings of this period was that Turkey was able to use these reconciliation and normalization processes quite ably, trying to demonstrate to the world that Armenia and Turkey have started this long process and basically don't interfere into these bilateral relations. We know it's going to be difficult, but it's worth trying. This was a message of Turkey. And I think many capitals around the world echoed this message of Ankara, basically supporting Ankara's vision that that reconciliation and normalization should go hand in hand. And what I argue in my article is that it's a trap, and the Armenian government, the current government, if it's serious and it wants to go into this process once again, they should be very careful about this, because normalization is basically about the two governments. It's about the political process. It's about displaying and manifesting political will to go forward and to create conditions when people from across the border can think about potential and touch upon the prospects of reconciliation. I am cognizant of the fact that reconciliation can take decades, even centuries, whereas normalization can take overnight. So that's why when reconciliation, normalization are brought together on an official level, this is what disturbs me and many of my colleagues in Armenia, because these two processes require completely different toolboxes. And I'm not here arguing that reconciliation is something that should second the process of normalization. I'm just arguing that whenever reconciliation, historical reconciliation, discussion of the genocide are brought about by the Turkish part, by Ankara, there is always a need to read between the lines about the kind of statements and preconditions that Ankara will put forward again. And judging from the recent statements coming from Ankara, you can feel that they are talking about preconditions. This is the first issue. The second most important issue, I believe we should not forget that the Artsakh question was one of the preconditions that Turkey has put forward from the early 1990s. I mean, not we, but some circles in the country and some politicians believe fervently that now the Artsakh question is resolved and there are no other obstacles remaining in normalization relations between Turkey and Armenia. This is absolutely unacceptable approach. And this should be revised from bottom up, because Turkey has a number of preconditions, and more importantly, I would say, most importantly for Turkey, for Ankara, are the bilateral disputes about historical aspects of Armenian-Turkish relations. And Turkey was, yes, I'm sorry, and Turkey was has created this facade over the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, over the Artsakh conflict for the past 30 years, trying to create the facade of the Karabakh conflict and saying when the Karabakh conflict is resolved, we'll go forward and normalize relations. But now we see that it has, at least Aliyev claims that the Karabakh conflict is gone. The logical question is why Turkey is not moving to normalize relations. It's very simple, because they have other preconditions, and they were using the Artsakh question just as a facade in order not to touch more sensitive questions, which is genocide, recognition of genocide, reparations, and the questions of Armenian property, the questions of Armenian heritage, question of cultural legacy, question of the borders. These are questions that Turkey knows very well that these questions will arise.
You know, we all think of the year 2009 when Edward Nalbandian and Ahmet Davutoğlu met in Zurich, and they tried to sign something, and it all was done in the presence of Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, Hillary Clinton, and other diplomats from the European Union. How can we go back on track? How can we continue that negotiation? And why is it that Russia now wants to push these relationships between Armenia and Turkey?
Well, I think that we should interpret the Russian approach and Russian statements with certain distance. We should not take them for granted. Russian statements they have been the same since early 1990s, basically supporting Russian, Turkish, Armenian political processes, but there are also reasons to believe that Russia is aware of the fact that if Armenian-Turkish border is open, if Turkish-Armenian relations are normalized, Russia's space, Russia's opportunities in the South Caucasus, especially in Armenia, are going to be squeezed, and they are going to have a big challenger in Armenia. And I think Russians, Lavrov doesn't mean what he says, that Russia is interested in normalizing Armenian-Turkish relations. Yes, of course, it will take time and resources for Turkey to replace Russia as an economic player in Armenia. And I'm talking like 10, 15 years down the road. But this is a job of a statesman to think about these those strategic issues from now on, to get prepared. You know, Russia's interests in Armenia, in the South Caucasus, have been seriously challenged by Turkey's assertive foreign policy. Russia, unlike Russia, Turkey is not only doing economic infiltration, it's not conducting, but it's also cultural, economic, political, military, geopolitical. So if we compare one for a second, the Russian interference, Russian presence in the South Caucasus with Turkish presence, we see that yes, Russia still has an upper hand, but it's also quite deceiving and challenging upper hand. So it's quite close to be at least a balance. The Turkey is close to strike a balance with Russia. And imagine if the borders are open between Turkey and Armenia, Russia will definitely needs to be more engaged in Armenia. Does Moscow want that? I think given the past legacy of Moscow's involvement and engagement in the South Caucasus and in Armenia, I have doubts that Russia at the moment is interested in like really moving on, other than the military, which Russia does best, other ways of means of countering Turkey's engagement in Armenia and in Armenian economy, and using Armenia for different political gains and economic gains.
You know, in your article, you mentioned that we have a border with Turkey of 300 kilometers. With Azerbaijan, we have 900 kilometers. With Georgia, I believe it's somewhere like 200, and Iran is only 50 kilometers. The question is, as Garo Paylan, member of the Turkish parliament, recently said, we should open the borders before we see any normalization. What do you think of that?
This idea is not new. There have been a number of statements and proposals before, but the problem is that technically and practically it's not possible if you open the border without normalizing relations, because you open the border and border control checkpoints, they require specific processes. For instance, for crossing the border, each country designates specific border guard control policies, and then they also introduce custom codes for each country. So for instance, Turkey doesn't have a custom export code for Armenia, so they have to come up with it. So I mean, I don't believe it's possible from technical and practical standpoint. There have been also efforts, there have been also proposals, I also talk about that in my article, which argues that basically Armenia and Turkey can delegate a third country to carry out specific affairs of presenting interests of Armenian and Turkish citizens in Ankara and Yerevan, like Switzerland does for Georgian and Russian citizens in respective countries. So there have been such efforts and such proposals in the past, and they have been disregarded by Ankara and by Yerevan. I don't know what are the current proposals. I don't know if Yerevan and Ankara are talking about any topic beyond using some diplomatic channels. I am not aware of any such conversation. However, I believe that whatever is being done, it needs to be done on a transparent level. The previous government of Armenia, they have been quite transparent when open when talking about Turkish-Armenian protocols. Yes, there were some questions that we all asked, but overall it has been quite transparent. I sincerely hope that there are no there won't be any surprises like we had on November 9th. I hope that given the sensitivity of the question, the government will be open and share all the developments that the Armenian society and the diaspora should know all the questions related to the Turkish-Armenian possible rapprochement that may happen down the road.
You know, in your article, you also bring out the fact that Russia, America, Europe are not very interested in the area. That's not a priority for them. One thing you have not mentioned is the role of China. And we are very interested in what you think in terms of, does the diaspora, Armenian diaspora, has any say when it comes to the question of reconciliation? What do you think of that?
You know, this is a very important question. You know, we all remember how diaspora reacted to the Turkish-Armenian rapprochement back in 2008 and 9 and 10. Russia was quite, the Armenian diaspora institutions around the world were quite vocal, raising their resentment and also their reservations about some of the formulations in the protocols. But they were not, their question, I was in San Francisco at that time, I was in Berkeley in 2009. I remember most of the questions, most of the concerns that I heard in the diaspora were about some formulations which were about the reconciliation. And that is a question of the historical dimension about revisiting some of the thorny issues between Armenian and Turkish nations. So I think when it comes to the question of the reconciliation, it needs to have as much of a say as Armenian society. Without a doubt, I think bypassing the diaspora institutions, by not letting them have a say in the process, is going to be a major flaw if the Armenian government decides to move on. The lessons from the past should not be forgotten and ignored. This is what makes a nation, to learn constantly from the past mistakes. So when the protocols were designed and drafted in 2009, most of the diaspora institutions didn't know about some of the formulations. That's why they raised their discontent. I think now, if any protocols are going to be drafted again, if anything major is going to happen, which is going to bring together these two concepts and normalization and reconciliation, I think it should be done carefully without provoking the diaspora, without creating problems that can boomerang, can come back and create more problems between Armenia and the diaspora institutions. I think, but when it comes to normalization, it's a problem, it's a job and the mission of the government. So there is a political will that needs to be displayed on the side of Ankara if they're really interested in this question, also on the side of Armenia. So that's why when we go deep and delve into this question, we understand the significance of disentangling these two processes and taking each of those processes and treat them on their own merits.
Dr. Matevosyan, I assure you, we are following the developments very, very closely, and almost every Armenian house in the diaspora discusses these issues. And this weekend I was with friends, and one of them is really into it. And he said, one thing we should watch out for Armenia to watch out, that no non-citizen can own more than 500 square meters or whatever of land in Armenia, to stop that influx of Turkish influx. What do you think of that?
You know, this conversation, if someone would talk about this 10, 15 years ago, nobody would, people would think that that person is insane. But I guess now we hear that kind of anecdotes here and there, that kind of rumors, narratives, stories. It yet to be proved, to be quantified, the kind of property sales that is happening in the country. And I believe, and I want to believe, that Armenia's institutions are constantly following and watching these developments. I really want to believe. However, I also hear that some people are interpreting the rise of property prices as a positive sign. So we should not confuse, Armenia should not confuse these two questions and not to look at it as a zero-sum game. Armenia needs to be careful, Armenian government needs to be very careful when it comes to this kind of property-related questions. And your colleague, whoever said that, has a point. Unfortunately, we know how many property deals are done within a specific quarters a year, but we don't know how many foreign citizens acquired properties and lands in the country. So I believe if a journalist makes investigation, perhaps we can know more if there was any increase of such property contracts and deals for the last year or two.
Again, congratulations for the publication of your article in a very prestigious magazine. Is there any final comments? Because this could continue. It's a very interesting topic. Is there any final comment?
Yes, what I want to say that you know, I want the diaspora and diaspora voices to be vocal in this period, in this crucial period. Now, as never before, Artsakh needs us. Artsakh needs our voice and our support and our message of unconditional support. And not only Artsakh, but also the Armenian society. Now, in this challenging time, when we think that we are going through unprecedented crisis, we should bring together all the resources that we have in terms of mental, in terms of intellectual, in terms of psychological, political, diplomatic, all the support we have, because if we're seeing that these are the worst days of our nation, we may be wrong, because they may be worse days down the road. So in order to prevent that from happening, we should prepare ourselves and be more vocal, or come up with ideas and opinions and solutions, how to help our nation to overcome these challenging times. So that's why I salute you, Vahram, for this effort. And I want all the people in diaspora offer their support and ideas. And what is really missing Armenian now is ideas, big plans, ideas and strategies. Strategy, this is, I guess, the most wanted word in the country. Strategy for the next 5-10 years, when we can consolidate all our resources and think about the long-term planning of our nation and also of this country.
And I assure you the diaspora is always ready to help Armenia, as we have done over the centuries and decades lately. The question is also, we need the Armenian government to tell us what they want from us, and I'm sure it will work out.
Definitely.
I really appreciate
the Armenian government should also open up. The institutions are so closed, are so reserved, and there should be such a synergy between the diaspora and Armenia for us to move forward.
Absolutely. I thank you very much for your time and comments, and again, wish you all the best in your future undertakings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.